Well, welcome back. What I'd like to do now is actually describe the lead-follow concepts, and actually, I'm going to actually get into a little bit of personal experience with lead-follow. And I guess one of the, I have a couple little anecdotes on it. One was, I've danced with thousands of women in the last 16 years, from very, very beginners to national champions. And not one woman ever has walked off the floor and go, that guy had incredible patterns. He did one pattern, led me into another pattern. But every one of those girls, when they walk off the floor, come up with one comment. They go, he had a great lead. So what we're trying to get right now is for you to get that sensation of what it takes to have a lead. What is this leading? I also had I was at Hustle USA, which is the national championships for hustle. I was dancing with a girl from Pennsylvania, and we were dancing along, and she started staring at me while I was dancing, and I was going through it, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Well, you're leading this dance." And I go, "Well, yeah." And she goes, "Well, she hasn't been led in 5 years." And basically, a lot of people have learned some patterns that they put together that has done the hustle timing, but there's really no connection, and there's no lead and follow. So what we want to do now is, I'm actually going to give you a little definition of where I came to all this lead-follow explanations. My first experience was people were asking me about a year ago, and they were saying, well, how do you lead this dance? What are you doing when you do this dance? So I did a lot of introspective work here, and I started listening to people, and I started listening to instructors, and everybody was giving information out, but I'd never really been, trained in this different terminology. So I'm going to bring up some terminology. One is dance position. I mean, you've all heard it before. You've actually been in dance position, where actually the guy stands like this and the woman stands in his arms. It's dance position. The instructor says it, you imitate it, but you never really tell you what it is. Then I actually got in with better dancers. So they actually started talking about frame. And I was like going, well, frame, I guess frame, I have a body and there's bones, a frame. I guess that frame is in dance position, so there's some so I started using the term framework too. But it really, for myself, was unclear. And I don't know if any of you out there actually have the same sense of kind of knowing but not really being quite, how do you know what you know? So then the next thing happened was, you can't even be a swing dancer. You cannot go to a swing competition, and I would venture to say most country competitions, and actually talk, unless you have this one buzzword. And the buzzword that's going around now is the 20th century buzzword, and that buzzword is connection. If you don't have a connection, how could you dance? So I was going, well, if you have a connection and your frame is inside your dance position, then all of this has something to do with this lead-follow thing. So what happens is I was kind of in turmoil, and I was kind of like watching myself dance while I'm dancing, trying to figure out this thing. So what I've done is I've actually come up with kind of a solution for me, and it might be a solution for you, and it's really not out of other people not being clear, it's really out of myself being not clear. So I want to thank all the people that and all this input that got me to arrive at this conclusion. So I want to actually define your frame. Where is our frame? What are we doing? What does our frame look like? So if you go to the classics, which is ballet and actually ballroom is very, very classic, they all talk about framework, but individually, like we did in our first tape on how do we move, what's going on when we're moving, how do I get myself places, all of it is discussed through your frame. That actually assists the movement. Remember, once we lift up our heel, we're off, we're moving. Our upper body and our frame will assist that movement. It's also how we communicate with our partner. How do I dance with somebody, and how do they know that I want them to do something? So let me define the frame for you right now. If we were in ballet, basically if you just take your arms out in front of you and just keep them at a little below shoulder height, very comfortable, your frame would move through your fingers, through your wrists, up your elbows, through the shoulder here, back down through the elbow, over the wrist, and through the tips of your fingers. Now if I keep my hands right here, then I have my frame, which is right in front of me. The one key word that a lot of ballroom people use, a lot of country western people, for sure, is they call centering. It's like I got to center myself. So what I was trying to do is figure, well, where's the center of this? And it's not in the center here, or I'm standing in the center. Your center is right split down the middle of you. So when you actually turn, if I was actually to move from here, I have my frame. If I was actually to take my center and actually move, my frame moves with me. And that will assist me in the movement that happens with your feet. Your movement starts from the feet and moves up. But your balance and all of your coordinating when you move actually is assisted by your frame, which is up in here. That's why whenever you see ballet people, they're always walking with their arms like this, which is a lower frame, and then when they do something, a spin or a turn, they actually releve or move up, and they're inside their frame so they could center themselves and execute a skill. So that is valuable. I think defining the frame from myself was actually like, that was it. So when someone mentions frame, I have a reference of where it is. I can touch my frame. I can be in frame. And a lot of times when you hear people where they actually do this and they move their elbow back, where they actually go out of frame, you can actually have a reference of, now I have to keep my elbows locked here, my shoulders here, just to keep my hand pressing forward. So that's what keeps me in my frame. So that is my first revelation. And for those of you that already understand it that way, hopefully this will validate what you already know. For those of you that are beginning, you can understand now, this is my frame, and we're going to make reference to frame now. We're going to talk about lead follow. So now we're going to talk about the next most complex thing, is how do we communicate with our partner? Off of our frames, what does it take for us to communicate with them so they know what we want us to do? And guys, it is no easy task. This is a very, very, very complex skill, and it actually takes a light touch. But the words that I'm going to use is actually the buzzword for swing people. Actually, I really like the word itself. I'm going to add some other terminology to it, and the word is connection. And that confused me. What is connection? When am I connected? If we touch hands, are we connected? Where is the connection to frame? So if I'm touching connect, and it's like, just ask people around, yourself. What is the connection? So basically what I'm going to do is use my hand right here and have a little conversation. When we partner dance, the female or our partner actually has to surrender half of the arm. And from the elbow to the fingertips, that is what I would call, like, if we were doing computer games, it would be kind of the joystick of computers. And what we do is we actually move the hand up, and that communicates to her that, guess what? Something's going to happen above your head. When I actually move it down, guess what? You're coming out of the spin. So we actually talk to one another through our hands while we dance. But where is that actual connection? Does that connection come from just from touching or moving the hand? Or am I responsible for some other things? So what I want to actually do is get into exactly what happens. Where is this connection? And this connection specifically the frame. So what I'm going to do is actually show you where your frame connects. If I take my hand and I push forward, that would be the lead. Okay? The leader would be actually driving the hand forward. I, as the follower, am holding my frame. What I mean by that is I hold my shoulder and my elbow in place. And I actually allow this part of the hand to be used. So it has to stay supple so it can be moved. And what happens is when I press here and the action of me holding, what it does is it creates a pressure. And if you watch the elbow right in here, you're going to see by me pressing and holding, you're going to see almost like the muscle kind of buckle here a little bit. And it actually kind of balls up. What I call that is compression. The action of me pushing and the action of me holding compresses at this elbow joint. That is your connection to frame. That is the ever elusive thing that happened for me. I was going, and I do this, and I never really was conscious of doing it. But everybody knew where they were going at all times. So if I actually create the compression right off of this elbow, and the woman feels that because she's holding it. What I'm actually telling her is, step back. And I actually give with that compression. If I'm actually on this hand and I hold that compression here, once I hold my frame and actually the pressing action happens, guess what? I'm going to step back. So what I am literally doing is following a series of compressions that we move. What I'm going to do with Lynn is actually show you a little exercise so you can experience that compression. So now we're on our frame, and like how we got the, I kind of understand that, it even makes a little bit of sense. It's kind of a little scientific, cool buzzword. Compression sounds pretty good. Now the question is, well, how do I move forward off a frame? How do I lead someone off of this compressed foot now? Notice my frame is out in front of me. Well, what happens is if we actually pull and I lean back and the person counterbalances me that's leading me, I'm actually doing the follow part right now. If I hold my elbow and I hold my shoulder and that person just steps back, we create a state of leverage where we are leveraging off of one another. When that person moves, what it does is it actually pulls my leverage forward. Notice how I didn't say drag or pull or overpower or manipulate. What I did was I said your actual body motion, if I'll be the guide part now, all I do is hold my frame and my shoulder and I step back. Notice how my center and my frame step back. I did not jerk back. I didn't overpower. I didn't pull myself out of frame. I actually held here, and just my simple frame moving back will cause her to leverage forward. So what we get involved with now in leading and following is a series of compressions and leverages in the movements that we did in the first tape. Because in the first tape we talked about my responsibility on how to move. Dancing starts from the feet up. Now how we communicate with one another is through our frames, through our connections, through a series of compressions and leverages while you dance. And that is for the man and the woman. So what I'm going to do is we're going to actually demonstrate some exercises that you can practice and experience leading and following. So now I'm going to give you my one little tip. This is probably the most important thing to do with this information. The most important thing to do with this information is nothing. Receive this communication. Take this information, because what everybody tries to do is do something. What I suggest is that you just notice when you dance what's going on while you're dancing. Experience, don't change your dancing at all. Experience yourself dancing and see how you do these compressions and leverages. And there's less strain and there's less concentration and less focus on, well, I got to learn something. No, you all are great dancers. You do not need to exercise this lead follow. Notice it. You have the information now, and what happens is the insight that you get from this transition for leading and follow will benefit not just your hustle dancing, it's going to enhance all of the dances you do. So I just wanted to share that with you on lead follow, and what we're going to do is follow that up with some exercises and actually get involved in leading follow some of the core syllabuses we did before. So we'll be right back.